A new element to the show this year. Adrian and I are going to give you like a weekly dose of local sports talk. Our topic this week is, of course, we're going to talk high school football and some of the top stories heading into the season. And Adrian, let's start with 5A. You were at the Rigby's championship game last year against Coeur d'Alene, that epic game. What are you hoping to see, or what do you expect to see from the Trojans this year?
Let's talk about that game really quick. That game was crazy because 3 minutes left or so, I'm thinking there's no way Rigby has a chance to at least come back or make this game close. And then they do that. And here's the highlights right here from that game. And it was just nuts watching that because all the fans in the stands were kind of like, okay, this is going to be a long trip back to East Idaho. And they do this. But, I mean, how do you top it? You're 10-1 last season, first state championship in school history. No pressure, right?
Yeah, they lost some key players too. Keegan Thompson, a quarterback, was huge for them.
Yeah.
Bryson Uffins, the tight end. Christian Fredrickson, wide receiver. Tanoa Togiai, who's now going to be living in Sac Lake City as a member of the Utah Utes. So they've got a lot of spots to fill.
I mean, but the offensive line, like head coach Armando Gonzalez was talking about, is going to be their key this season. Those big guys up front are really going to help the quarterback keep him protected and help that running game as well.
I think their defensive line, too, is going to be key for them because their secondary is going to be one that's going to be, there's going to be some development that's going to be needed there. That's maybe one of their weaker spots. So that pass rush is going to have to be key, I think, for Rigby in order to give that secondary some time to develop because they could be kind of exposed there a little bit if they're not. So, all right, so they could be a contender. Highland just certainly looked pretty good tonight as well, so they should be up there again. Moving on to 4A. I think that one team to look at that I'm eager to see is the Hillcrest Knights. Of course, they were state champs 2 years ago. Last year went 5-5, but they have a ton of guys coming back this year. Their skill guys are pretty much all there. So I kind of expect a little bit of a bounce back from Hillcrest. In fact, they do have to replace their whole entire starting offensive and defensive line. So I think that might be the key for them because if those lines can gel, this team, I think, is once again going to be a state title contender.
You know, I don't get to watch them very often because, of course, you're up here covering that games more often than I am. But just every time we show their highlights, I'm always impressed by the way they move the football. They're ruthless. They don't care who's in their way. They're just going to move it down. And, of course, I love their uniforms as well. I'm a big uniform guy, and those uniforms are sick.
Well, yeah, they're not shy about saying they're going to run the ball, and that's what they're going to do. They're one of those teams that tell you what they're going to do, and then even though you know it's coming, they still just do whatever they want about it. So I'll kind of look for them to bounce back a little bit too. Of course, sticking in 4A, Blackfoot, they made it to the championship game. They've got a new quarterback, new coach, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. You wanted to talk about, you kind of have your eye on Pocatello. Why is that?
Because every time I talk to Dave Spillett and his crew over there, they're always saying they have a chip on their shoulder. They're really mad that they don't have a home stadium with Century playing at their campus and Highland playing at their campus. Of course, they're district fields, but they're not really happy about it. And I think this is a year where they're mad, they're ready to go, and they're ready to hit someone. And I think that's a scary team when you face that, is they're just ready to take someone over.
Well, another dynamic, too, regarding Pocatello and Century as well is that they're back to being a three-team league with Preston. Of course, remember, last couple of years, they were kind of combined with the District 4 teams for that East Pod and the West Pod for the Great Basin Conference. Well, District 4 teams kind of voted them out, and District 6 teams didn't want to absorb them. So once again, it's Pocatello, Century, and Preston. It's so weird to have a three-team conference. I know, some places can't avoid it because of, geography is what it is. But just 2 conference games will determine whether you make it to state or not. And that's, again, the situation Pocatello, Century, and Preston find themselves in.
Yeah, Dave Spillett really concerned about those last 2 weeks of the season. He's hoping to get there. That's the 2 conference championship games, or I should say 2 conference games between Preston and Century are those last 2 weeks. Hoping we can get there.
Yeah, well, that's another big point of this season, too, is how the COVID impact.
Yeah.
If we're even going to get through the season. You were at the Highland game tonight. How was the social distancing and the precautions did look down there?
Travis Bell, the AD for Highland, spent so much time putting those dots in anything like that. The players all wearing masks, as well as the coaches, too. It's just so hard for the crowd. You're trying to get the crowd wrangled up and say, hey, wear your mask, wear this and that. And, I mean, you have over, 500 people there, so it's easier said than done. Hopefully everyone can wear their mask and make sure we're playing high school football in October.
Let's get through the season.
Yeah.
Another team that I'm kind of interested in taking a look at is the two-time defending 3A champs, Sugar Salem Diggers. I'm kind of intrigued by that Mountain Rivers 3A District 6 conference because it is going to be, I think it's going to be very interesting. Sugar Salem, of course, back-to-back state champs, but they only have 5 out of their 22 starters from last year coming back. Only 1 on offense. So this is going to be, if the Diggers are going to keep their dominance, it's going to almost be a completely new group that's going to be doing it. And of course, South Fremont, they have about 7 all-conference guys coming back, and then I think Teton, they have a lot of starters coming, or a lot of guys coming back as well. So I think that it will be very interesting to see if Sugar can hang on to that dominance in that conference, like they have the last couple of years, or if South Fremont's going to be able to maybe come in and crash the party a little bit.
Those are historic teams for Sugar as well, too. I mean, you talk about those 2-time defending state champions in football, but also basketball as well. The chemistry on the football side and the basketball side really carried them through. And like you said, a lot of starters gone. How are they going to fill those holes? But, I mean, they find a way to win in every sport, right?
So that's why you can't count them out, even though they've lost all those guys, yeah.
Big first game, though, against Century. That's going to be a fun one. 4A versus 3A, 2 teams looking to win and make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Of course, I think there's something in the water up there in Sugar City because they had not just the football, not just the basketball, they had a lot of teams that were just dominant. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. So, all right, so it gets started. I don't want to say for real because, of course, we had the good game tonight, but full Friday night of football coming up next week.
We got here, right?
Yeah, we're here. Let's stay here.
Like in March and April, I'm like, man, when is August going to get here for football? Are we going to get football? And then finally, we're here. We got soccer as well. Hopefully the air quality clears up and all that. And we can get some games.
So 2020 now.
Right? Like,
another thing.
Of course.
It's kind of like the Hunger Games. There's someone running the game oh, they're getting a little cocky. Throw in some smoke. It's like, I mean, come on. You need those game makers need to lay off of us a little bit.
We need to give them a good dinner, pay them some money to, hook it up.
Maybe, I don't know. I can't take too much more of it. If they throw in another thing, I might just have to eat the berries. All right. If you watch the Hunger Games, you know what I'm talking about. All right, let's take a